It often arrives in a small, ordinary moment. You catch sight of your own hands, and they have grown old, the skin thin, the knuckles swollen, and for a moment you do not recognize them. Or you reach for something on a high shelf, and your shoulder will not do what it always did. Or you watch someone younger step easily into a role you once filled, and you realize, with a quiet ache, that no one is asking you to fill it anymore. And in that small moment, a cold thought slips in and settles over your heart. My best is behind me now. I am not needed the way I once was. I am becoming a burden. From here, it is only decline. The strong years are gone, and all that is left is the slow subtraction of everything I used to be. If that is the thought that has been haunting you, if you are afraid of growing old, or already feel the strength and usefulness draining out of your days, if you feel invisible now, sidelined, replaced, set quietly on a shelf while the world moves on without you, if you dread becoming a weight on the people you love, and if some part of you has begun to believe that your life is now just a long downhill toward the end, then I want you to stay here with me for a while. Because the story the world tells about growing old, that it is nothing but loss, nothing but fading, nothing but a slow becoming useless, is not the story God tells. And there is a word for you, an old and steady word that does not pretend your losses away, but lifts your eyes to something the world cannot see. So take a breath, and let me speak to the one who feels themselves growing old and is afraid. And let me say at the start what this hour will not do. It will not flatter you with the world's empty slogans about age being just a number, or tell you that 70 is the new 50, as if the right attitude could undo the aching knees and the failing eyes. It will not pretend your losses are not losses, and it will not hurry you past your grief with a forced cheerfulness that leaves you feeling more alone than before. Instead, it will tell you the truth, the whole truth, the honest sorrow of growing old, and the deeper hope that runs beneath it. Because there is a comfort for the aging heart that does not depend on pretending you are young, and it is sturdier and warmer than any flattery the world can offer. It is the comfort of being known, and held, and treasured, and still useful to God in the very years the world has taught you to dread. Let me begin by naming honestly what you are facing, because the scriptures never pretend that growing old is easy. There is the failing of the body, and it is a real grief. The things you once did without a thought now cost you. The stares that were nothing are now something. The energy that carried you through long days now runs out by afternoon. Your eyes are not as sharp, your hands not as steady, your step not as sure. And there is a particular indignity in it, in needing help with things you used to do for others, in feeling your own body slowly stop obeying you. This is not nothing. It is a daily series of small losses, each one a little reminder that the strength you relied on your whole life is quietly leaving you. And these losses come with a kind of mourning that often goes unspoken, because each one seems too small to grieve out loud. Who would understand if you wept over no longer being able to open a jar, or kneel in the garden, or climb the stairs without stopping? And yet, taken together, these small surrenders are the steady dismantling of the independent, capable person you have always been. You are saying goodbye, a little at a time, to abilities you never thought about because you never had to. And each quiet goodbye is a real loss, even if the world thinks it too minor to notice. It is right to feel the weight of it. You are not being weak or self-pitying. You are grieving, in small, daily pieces, the strong body that carried you through your whole life and is now, gently and steadily, handing in its resignation. There is the feeling of being sidelined, of becoming invisible. The world seems to be speaking a language that is moving past you. Decisions get made without your input. Conversations flow around you as though you were already half gone. Younger people step into the places you once held, and no one seems to notice that you are still here, still thinking, still capable of more than they assume. You spent a lifetime being needed, being consulted, being in the middle of things, and now you find yourself on the edge, watching, wondering when exactly you became someone the world looks past. There is a special loneliness in being unseen while you are still fully present. You are not gone. Your mind is still working, your heart still feeling, your soul still as alive as it ever was. Inside, you do not feel old. You feel like yourself, the same self you have always been, simply housed now in a body that has aged around you. But the world increasingly treats you as if the real you has already departed, as if the gray hair and the slower step were the whole story, as if there were nothing behind your eyes still worth listening to. To be looked past while you are still here, still yourself, still longing to be known and useful and included, is a quiet and particular grief. And it can make you begin to doubt your own continuing reality, to wonder whether the self you still feel so vividly inside even matters anymore to anyone. There is the fear of being useless, which may be the sharpest fear of all, because so much of how we measure ourselves is tied to what we can do, what we produce, what we contribute. And when the doing slows, when the producing stops, a terrible question creeps in. If I can no longer do what I once did, what am I even for? You begin to feel like dead weight, like someone taking up space that more useful people could use, like a guest who has stayed too long at the party of life. And that feeling, that you have become useless, can hollow out your sense of worth until you wonder whether your life still has any point at all. This is perhaps the deepest wound of growing old in a world like ours, a world that worships productivity and treats human beings like machines, valued only as long as they function. From your earliest years, you were taught to earn your place by what you could do, praised for your achievements, measured by your output. And so it is no wonder that when the output slows, you feel your very right to exist slipping away. But that whole way of measuring a human life is a lie, and it was always a lie, even when you were young and strong enough not to notice it. A person is not a machine, valuable only while it produces. A person is a soul, made in the image of God, of infinite and unchanging worth, whether they are building empires or lying still in a bed, unable to lift a hand. The world's cruel arithmetic that the useful deserve to exist and the useless do not has no place in the kingdom of the God who counts every hair on your head and keeps every tear in his bottle. You were never valued by him for your function. You were loved by him for your soul. There is the dread of becoming a burden. Perhaps more than anything, you do not want to be a weight on the people you love. You watched, maybe, what caring for an aging parent cost you, and the thought of becoming that for your own children fills you with a quiet horror. You would rather disappear than be a problem to be managed, a duty on someone's calendar, a source of worry and exhaustion for the people you would give anything to spare. The fear of dependence, of needing to be cared for, of no longer being the one who gives, but the one who must receive, can feel almost unbearable. And this fear has a particular sting for those who have spent a lifetime being the strong one, the capable one, the one others leaned on. If you were the parent everyone came to, the worker others depended on, the person who held things together, then the thought of becoming the one who must be held together can feel like a kind of death before death. You measured yourself, perhaps for decades, by how much you could carry for others, and now the arithmetic seems to be reversing, and you dread the day when you will be the weight in someone else's arms. There is a deep grief in that reversal, and a deep fear, and the world gives you nothing to set against it, but the cold suggestion that a life which can no longer give is a life that has lost its point. And there are the losses that pile up as the years go on. Friends die. The people who knew you when you were young grow fewer. The world you grew up in vanishes, piece by piece, until you feel like a stranger who has outlived their own era. The places, the customs, the faces, the whole familiar world, all of it slipping away, leaving you increasingly alone in a present that does not feel like yours. And grief like that is cumulative. It builds. When you are young, a loss comes now and then, and there is time and strength to recover before the next one. But in old age, the losses can come close together, one after another, friend after friend, until you feel you are living in a season of almost constant farewell, never fully recovered from the last goodbye before the next arrives. It is a heavy thing, this long accumulation of grief, and few people speak of it, and fewer still understand it unless they have lived it. If your heart feels worn thin by too many goodbyes, know that God sees the particular weariness of a soul that has had to say farewell so many times. He is keeping count of every loss you have borne. Not one of those griefs has gone unnoticed by Him, and not one of the beloved faces you have lost is lost to Him. He holds them all, and He holds you in the long twilight of your many farewells. And underneath it all runs the deep, cold current of the worst thought, that the best of life is behind you now, that everything from here is subtraction, that you are simply running down, like a clock winding toward its last tick, and there is nothing ahead but more loss, more weakness, more fading, until the end. That fear, that it is all downhill now, all decline, may be the heaviest weight an aging heart can carry. So let me begin gently to lift it, because it is built on a story that is not true. This fear has a way of poisoning even the good days. When you believe that your life is now nothing but a long descent, then every small loss becomes evidence for the prosecution. Every gray hair and stiff joint a fresh proof that the story is ending, and there is nothing ahead but more of the same, only worse. The fear colors everything, draining the present of its joy because you are always bracing for the next decline. And the worst of it is the quiet conclusion it whispers, that since it is all downhill anyway, perhaps it would be better to simply give up now, to stop hoping, stop trying, stop expecting anything good, and just endure the slide. That whisper is one of the cruelest lies the enemy of your soul ever tells. And tonight I want to answer it, not with a slogan, but with the truth of what God says your later years actually are. First, hear this clearly. The Bible does not lie to you about aging, and neither will I. The Scriptures are remarkably honest about the losses of growing old. There is a passage near the end of Ecclesiastes that describes it without flinching. The trembling hands, the dimming eyes, the fading of desire, the long home toward which we all walk. God's Word does not paper over the real griefs of age with cheerful slogans. So I will not tell you that growing old does not hurt, or that your body is not truly weakening, or that the losses are not real. They are real, and your grief over them is honest and right. And there is a strange comfort in that honesty itself. Because a faith that refused to admit the hard truths of aging would be a faith you could not trust with your real life. But the Bible looks the losses of old age full in the face, names them without flinching, and still, in the very same breath, speaks of hope and fruitfulness, and a God who carries the gray-haired. That is a faith robust enough to hold your actual experience. It does not require you to pretend. It does not ask you to paste a smile over your aching body and your shrinking world. It meets you in the unvarnished truth of what growing old costs. And there, in the truth, it speaks a hope that can actually bear weight. You do not have to lie about your losses to receive God's comfort. You only have to bring them, honestly, to the God who is honest about them too. But here is what the world's story leaves out, and what God's story insists upon. The fading of your body is not the fading of your worth. The slowing of your usefulness is not the end of your purpose. And the direction of your life, rightly seen, is not downhill at all. Let me show you, through the lives of some who walked this road before you, that the God who made you does not discard the old, but treasures them, carries them, and bears fruit through them to the very end. There was a very old man named Barzillai, and he lived in a time when his king was in terrible trouble. The king, David, had been driven from his throne, forced to flee into the wilderness with the people who were still loyal to him, hungry and exhausted and in danger. And it was this old man, Barzillai, far past the age when anyone would have expected him to be of use, who rose up and met the need. He was a wealthy man, and he poured out his wealth and his provisions to sustain the king and all who were with him in their desperate hour. When the strong young men had failed the king, this old man did not. His age did not make him useless. In the very season when the world would have set him aside, his generosity and his loyalty became the thing that carried a king through his darkest night. Stop and consider how easily he could have excused himself. He was old. He had surely earned his rest. He could have said that this was a younger man's fight, that he had given his years already, that no one could expect anything more from a man of his age. The world would have nodded and let him sit by his fire. But Barzillai did not measure his usefulness by his age. He looked at the need in front of him, and he looked at what he still had to give, and he gave it, fully, when it counted most. And it turned out that what an old man still had to offer was exactly what the moment required, the very thing the strong young men around the king had not provided. Do not assume, because you are old, that you have nothing left to give that matters. The need in front of you may be precisely the thing your years have prepared you to meet. And your gift, freely given, may carry someone through their darkest night. And when the danger passed, and David was restored to his throne, the king did not forget what the old man had done. He wanted to honor Barzillai, to bring him across the river and into the palace, to care for him for the rest of his days as a reward for his faithfulness. And here, Barzillai answered with a dignity that is worth hearing. He did not pretend to be younger than he was. He said, honestly, that he was a very old man, that his senses had dimmed, that he could no longer taste what he ate or hear the voices of the singers as he once had. He did not want to be a burden to the king in the palace. He asked only to be allowed to go back home, to die in his own town, near the graves of his father and mother. He named his own decline without shame and without despair, and the king honored him for it. David kissed him and blessed him, and provided for his household even after the old man was gone. Hear what is in that story for you. Here was an aged man who did not deny his weakness, who spoke plainly about the losses of his years, who knew he could no longer do or enjoy what he once had, and yet he was not useless, and he was not discarded. In his old age, he had done something that mattered enormously, something the strong had failed to do, and he was honored, treasured, kissed, and blessed by his king. His faithfulness remembered, his household cared for after him. The losses he named were real, but they did not erase his worth, or his usefulness, or his honor. And the king you serve does not forget the faithfulness of his old servants either. Your years of service are not lost on him. Your decline, honestly named, does not lower you in his eyes 1 inch. Think of all the faithfulness of your own long life. The quiet years of showing up, of doing the right thing when no one watched, of loving and serving and giving, much of which no one ever saw or thanked you for. You may feel that all of it is forgotten now, filed away in a past that no longer matters, as irrelevant as you yourself feel. But it is not forgotten. The King remembers. Every act of faithfulness across your long years is held in the memory of God, who does not forget the labor of love of his servants. The world has a short memory and a shorter attention span, and it moves on. But God does not move on from you. The decades you poured out are written in his book, and the old man or woman the world overlooks is, to God, a long, faithful servant, whose every quiet kindness is treasured and will one day be openly honored. Your life of faithfulness is not lost. It is kept, every bit of it, by the one who matters most. If these words are reaching something in you tonight, you might write one word in the comments, simply the word carried, as a quiet way of saying, I am growing old, and I am trusting that God still holds me. And it may help you to see how many others are writing it too, because you are far from alone in this fear. Now let me show you what God did with another old man when the world was certain he was finished. There was an old man named John, the last living one of the friends who had walked with Jesus. And by the end of his long life, everything had been stripped from him. His companions were long dead, his strength was gone. And for his faith, he had been banished, exiled to a barren little island, cut off from everyone, alone at the very edge of the world. By every measure the world could make, John was finished, an old man, used up, forgotten, banished to die quietly out of sight, with nothing left to give and no one left to give it to. He had outlived them all. Every one of the friends who had walked the dusty roads with him in the bright days of their youth, who had seen what he had seen and shared what he had shared, was gone. He was the last. And there is a particular desolation in that, in being the final survivor of your own generation, the keeper of memories that no one else alive can share, carrying a whole vanished world inside you that you can no longer show to anyone. Add to that the exile, the banishment, the lonely island far from any familiar face, and you have a picture of about as complete a stripping away as a human life can suffer. Old, alone, the last of his kind, cast out, with every earthly reason to believe that his story was simply over, and the only thing left was to wait for the end. And it was there, in that exile, in that extreme old age, on that lonely island, that God gave John the greatest revelation any human being has ever received. There, when the world had written him off entirely, the heavens opened, and the old man saw visions of things to come, of the throne of God, of the end of all sorrow, of a new heaven and a new earth where there would be no more death, nor crying, nor pain. And what he saw and wrote in his banished old age became the final book of the Bible, a gift to the whole church in every generation since, including this one, including tonight. Hear what that means. John's most important work did not come in the strength of his youth. It came in his exiled, forgotten, used up old age. When the world was most certain he was finished, God was not finished with him at all. In fact, God had saved his greatest assignment for his very last and weakest years. And that is a pattern worth burning into your heart. Because the world's certainty that an old person is finished is not God's verdict. God does some of his deepest work in the years the world has already dismissed. Your most significant contribution may not be behind you. It may be ahead of you still, waiting in the very years you have been taught to dread. And notice where God met him. He did not meet John in a place of strength and honor and bustling activity. He met him in exile, in isolation, in the very circumstances that looked most like the end. The loneliness that the world would call a tragedy became the quiet room in which God spoke his greatest word. The weakness that the world would call useless became the open, empty space that God filled with glory. This is so often God's way. He does not wait for us to be strong and busy and impressive before he uses us most deeply. He frequently does his most profound work in the stripped-down, set-aside seasons, when our hands are empty and our striving has ceased, and there is finally room for him to fill. Your quiet years, your emptied hands, your enforced stillness, these are not disqualifications. In the hands of God, they may be the very conditions for the deepest work he has yet to do in you and through you. It is worth saying plainly, God had saved John's greatest work for last. Not for his prime, not for his strong middle years when he was busy and capable and surrounded by friends, but for the very end, for the weakest, loneliest, most stripped-down season of his entire life. The crowning achievement of a long life given to God came after everyone assumed there was nothing left to come. And if that was true for John, you cannot assume you know what God still intends for your own final chapters. You may imagine that your story has already had its important parts, that what remains is only an epilogue, a slow winding down. But the author of your life may have written one of your most important scenes near the very end. Do not close the book before he has finished writing it. The years you are tempted to dismiss as leftover time may be precisely the years God has reserved for something you cannot yet imagine. And lest you think this is only ancient history, let me tell you about a man much closer to our own time, named James Packer, known to nearly everyone as J.I. Packer. He was one of the most respected Christian teachers of his age, a writer whose books had shaped countless lives. His whole ministry was built on reading and writing and teaching. He was the kind of man whose mind seemed inexhaustible, whose words had guided multitudes into a deeper knowledge of God, who had spent a long lifetime in faithful and fruitful labor for the things of Christ. If anyone had earned the right to simply rest on what he had already given, it was this man. And then, in his old age, his eyesight failed. A disease in both of his eyes took from him the ability to read and to write, the very faculties his entire life's work had depended upon. By the world's measure, his usefulness was finished. The teacher could no longer read. The writer could no longer write. Imagine what that loss meant to a man like that. His whole life had been spent among books and pages and words. Reading was as natural to him as breathing. Writing was the way he served God and blessed the world. And then, in his old age, that door simply closed. If anyone had reason to conclude that his usefulness was finished, that there was nothing left for him to do but sit in the dark and wait for the end, it was this man. The very gift that had defined his life was taken from him precisely when he was too old to build a new one. By every calculation the world makes, he was done. And yet, he did not stop. He went on serving, encouraging, trusting God, faithful to the very end of a long life. And here is the remarkable thing. Not long before he lost his sight, he had written a small book about this very subject, about growing old. In it, he said that the world tells us aging is nothing but loss, and so it sets the old aside, puts them on a shelf to be comfortable and idle and useless. But that, he insisted, is not God's view at all. In God's hands, he said, the later years are a time of ripening, of deepening wisdom, of continued fruitfulness, and we should run the last lap of our lives not shuffling toward the finish, but, as he put it, flat out, the way a runner saves something for a final sprint at the end of the race. Growing old, he said with a smile, is not for wimps. There is grit and good humor in that little phrase, and it is worth letting it stiffen your spine. He was not pretending aging was easy. He knew firsthand it was hard, harder than the young can imagine. But he refused to let its hardness make him bitter or idle or despairing. He treated his old age the way a seasoned soldier treats a difficult final campaign, with courage, with humor, with the determination to be found faithful at his post to the very last. That is a posture worth borrowing. Growing old is not for the faint of heart. It takes courage. But you are not without courage, and you are not without help. The same God who carried you through every other hard season of your life is with you in this one too. And he is able to make even your aging a thing done with grace and dignity, and a stubborn, holy refusal to quit before the finish. And he lived it, finishing his own race in faith, useful to God even when he could no longer do the things that had made him famous. Hear what his life says to you. Even when age strips away the very abilities you built your life upon, your usefulness to God is not over. He can bear fruit through you in a different form, a quieter form, perhaps, but no less real. And the call on your final years is not to give up and fade, but to finish the race well, to run the last lap with whatever strength you have left, because the finish line is not the end of the story, but the entrance to glory. There is something bracing in that image, and I want you to feel it. The world pictures old age as a slow shuffle toward an exit, a winding down, a giving up by inches. But that teacher pictured it as the final lap of a race, the part where the runner, far from easing off, gathers everything left and pours it out in one last sprint toward the line. Not because the body is strong, it is not, but because the finish is worth everything, and the one waiting at the tape is worth every last ounce of effort. Your old age is not the bleachers where you sit and watch the race wind down. It is the final stretch of the track, and you are still running it. And the call on you is not to coast, but to finish strong, with whatever you have. Eyes fixed on the one who waits to catch you. The race is nearly run. Do not stop now. The best part of any race is the finish. So let me tell you what is actually true, the truth that all of these lives point toward. Your worth was never in your usefulness. This is the deepest comfort, and you must hear it. The world measures your value by what you produce, how strong you are, how much you contribute, how useful you remain. And so, by the world's measure, as your strength fades, your worth fades. But that was never God's measure, not for one moment. You were precious to God when you were a helpless newborn who could do nothing at all, who produced nothing, who could only lie there and be cared for. You did not earn your worth then by being useful, and you do not lose it now by becoming less so. God does not love you for your output. He loves you because you are His. And the fading of everything you can do does not touch, by even a hair, the worth of who you are. Think about how you regard a beloved old friend, or a parent, or a grandparent in their frailty. You do not love them less because they can do less. If anything, your tenderness toward them deepens as their strength fades. You do not sit by their bed calculating their usefulness. You simply love them because of who they are to you, because of the bond between you, because they are precious. And if you, with all your imperfect love, can treasure a frail old person simply for who they are and not for what they can produce, how much more does God, whose love is perfect and whose heart is infinitely tender, treasure you? He is not standing over your aging life with a ledger, totaling your declining output. He is gazing at you the way a father gazes at a sleeping child, with a love that has nothing to do with what you can do for him, and everything to do with the simple fact that you are His own. In fact, God's word goes further than merely saying your worth survives your aging. It says your gray head is itself a thing of glory. The hoary head, the scripture says, is a crown of glory, if it be found in the way of righteousness. And again, the beauty of old men is the gray head. Hear that. The very thing the world tells you to die and hide and be ashamed of, God calls a crown. The marks of your age, which the world treats as defects to be erased, God treats as honors to be respected. The visible signs of a life long lived, a road long walked, a faith long kept. In a culture frantically trying to erase every wrinkle and color every gray hair, God quietly declares that the aged face is a beautiful thing, and the white head a crown. You do not need to be ashamed of your years. In the eyes of the one whose opinion outlasts all others, they are your glory. God Himself has promised to carry you in your old age. Listen to what He says. Even to your old age I am He, and even to hoar hairs will I carry you. I have made, and I will bear. Even I will carry, and will deliver you. Hear the tenderness in that. The God who made you, who carried you from the womb, who has borne you all your life, promises that He will go on carrying you all the way through your gray-haired years to the very end. You spent your strong years carrying others. Now, in the years when you cannot carry, He carries you. And this is the answer to your deepest fear, the fear of being a burden. You are not a burden to God. He calls it His joy to carry you. Being carried is not your failure, it is His design, and it has been the truth about you all along. For the truth is, that you were always being carried, even in your strongest years, even when you felt most self-sufficient and capable. Every breath you ever took was given to you. Every heartbeat was sustained by a power not your own. The strength you thought of as yours was on loan the whole time, held up by the everlasting arms underneath you. The only thing that changes in old age is that the illusion of self-sufficiency falls away, and you finally see clearly what was always true, that you have never, for one moment of your life, held yourself up. God has always been carrying you. Old age does not make you newly dependent. It simply removes the disguise and lets you feel, at last, the arms that were always there. And there is a deep peace available in that. The peace of stopping the exhausting pretense of carrying yourself and resting back into the arms that have held you since before you were born. And the later years can be your most fruitful, not your least. God's word says of the righteous that they shall still bring forth fruit in old age. They shall be fat and flourishing. Not that they shall wither and become useless, but that they shall still bear fruit. And not meager fruit, but full and flourishing fruit, even in old age. The fruit may change its form. There may be less doing and more being, less strength and more wisdom, less activity and more prayer, more presence, more telling the next generation what God has done. But it is real fruit, and often it is the richest fruit a life ever bears. The same psalm that promises fruit in old age paints a picture worth seeing. The righteous, it says, shall flourish like the palm tree and grow like a cedar in Lebanon. These are not the images of the young and the fast-growing. The palm and the cedar are trees of endurance, trees that take long years to come into their full strength and stature, trees that are at their most majestic precisely when they are old. The cedar of Lebanon is grandest after generations of slow growth. The palm bears its sweetest fruit in its mature years. God did not compare his aging saints to spring flowers that bloom briefly and fade. He compared them to the long-lived, deep-rooted, ever greater trees, whose glory is the glory of age, not youth. That is his picture of you, not a fading bloom, but a deep-rooted tree, still growing toward its fullest height, still bearing, still green at the top. The older, the grander. The old saint who can do little but pray may be doing more in the unseen places than the busy young in all their motion. This is one of the great reversals of God's kingdom, and the world cannot see it at all. The world counts only what is visible, measurable, productive, loud. But God counts the unseen things, the prayers whispered in a quiet room, the patient endurance of suffering without complaint, the gentle word of wisdom to a struggling grandchild, the faithful trust that holds on to God when the body is failing. These things make no noise. They show up on no ledger the world keeps, and yet they may be the most powerful and fruitful things a human being ever does. An old woman, too weak to leave her chair, praying through her long days for her family and her church, may be moving heaven more than she will ever know. The kingdom of God does not run on visible vigor. It runs, very often, on the hidden faithfulness of the weak and the old and the overlooked, whom the world has set aside, but God has not. And there is a particular fruit that only the old can bear, which the young cannot, no matter how strong they are. The fruit of testimony, of a long life's worth of seeing God prove faithful. The aging psalmist prayed that God would not forsake him until he had shown God's strength to the next generation, his power to everyone yet to come. That was the assignment he begged to live for, to tell the young what he had learned across his many years, that God is faithful, that he keeps his promises, that he does not fail those who trust him. You have something the young simply do not have: decades of evidence. You have watched God carry you through things that should have destroyed you. You have seen him provide and forgive and sustain and never once let you go. That long testimony is a treasure, and the world desperately needs to hear it. There is a young person somewhere who needs to know that the God of their childhood is real and faithful all the way to the end. And you, with your gray head and your long memory, are exactly the one God has prepared to tell them. And your hope, in the end, is not in this fading body at all. Hear this promise: though our outward man perish, yet the inward man is renewed day by day. The body, the outward man, is wearing out, and the Bible does not deny it, but that is not the whole of you, and it is not the truest part of you. While the outer tent grows frail, the inner person, the real you, is being renewed day by day, growing not weaker but stronger, not dimmer but brighter, ripening toward a glory the eye cannot yet see. The direction of a believer's life, rightly understood, is not downhill toward the grave. It is uphill toward home. What is wasting is only the tent. What is coming is resurrection, a body and a life that will never again grow old. Hold on to that word, renewed. Day by day, the scripture says, the inward person is being renewed, even as the outward person wears away. That means that on the very days when you feel weakest, when the body has given you its worst report, something in you is being made new, quietly, invisibly, by the Spirit of God. The grumbling joints and the failing eyes are telling you one story, a true story, as far as it goes, about the tent wearing thin. But there is a deeper and truer story unfolding underneath, where the real you is being polished and ripened and prepared for glory, growing more alive, not less, with every passing day. You are not simply running down. On the inside, where it matters most, you are being built up. And one day, the wearing-out tent will be folded away entirely, and what has been growing inside it all along will step out, renewed and radiant and young forever, into a world without any aging at all. Now, let me be careful and honest here, because I will not sell you a false comfort. I am not telling you that if you have enough faith, God will give you back your youth, restore your strength, undo your aging, keep your body from failing. He has not promised that, and it would be cruel to pretend he has. Your body may well go on declining. The losses may continue. The scriptures are honest about this, and so am I. What God promises is not the reversal of your aging, but His presence in it, His arms underneath you, His purpose continuing through you, your worth unchanged in His eyes, and a hope ahead of you so bright that it makes these present losses, real as they are, look light by comparison. That is a truer and sturdier comfort than any promise of staying young, because it does not depend on your body at all. It depends on the God who carries you. I want to linger here for a moment, because this is where so many go wrong and end up more wounded than before. There are voices that will tell aging people that with enough faith, enough positive thinking, enough of the right supplements and the right attitude, they can hold off the years, stay vigorous, feel young, beat back decline. And when the body keeps failing anyway, as it always will, those voices leave the aging soul feeling like a failure, as though their weakening were a sign of weak faith. I will not lay that burden on you. The most faithful saint who ever lived still grew old and died. Aging is not a sign of God's displeasure or of your failure. It is simply the common road that every human being walks, and that even the Lord's most beloved have walked before you. So do not measure your faith by your vigor. The promise of God was never that the faithful would not age. It was that He would walk with them through their aging, carry them in it, and bring them safely home on the far side of it. And that promise, rightly understood, is far better than the promise of staying young could ever be. For if God merely kept you vigorous, you would still, in the end, be relying on your own strength, and you would still, in the end, run out of it, and death would still come. But the promise He actually makes goes deeper than your strength and outlasts it. He promises a presence that does not fail when your body fails, arms that hold you when your own arms can no longer lift, and a future on the other side of the grave that no amount of youth could ever buy. The world's best offer is a few more years of fading vigor. God's offer is Himself, now, in your weakness, and glory forever beyond it. Do not trade the second for the first. Do not spend the precious days you have left chasing a youth God never promised, when He is holding out to you something so much greater, His own faithful presence, all the way down and all the way through and all the way home. So let me name the lies that the fear of aging has been telling you, and answer each one. The first lie is that you are useless now, because you cannot do what you once did. But your worth was never in your usefulness. God treasured you as a helpless infant who could do nothing, and He treasures you now. Barzillai, an old man with dimmed senses, was honored and kissed and blessed by his king. The fading of your abilities does not make you worthless. You are not what you can do. You are who God says you are, and He says you are precious, useful or not. The world has trained you, your whole life, to answer the question, who are you, with the things you do. I am a worker. I am a provider. I am the one who handles this, who fixes that, who carries the family. And so, when the doing falls away, it can feel as though the self falls away with it, as though there is nothing left of you once the roles are stripped off. But those roles were never the real you. They were things you did, not the person you are. Underneath every role you ever played, there has always been a soul, known and named and loved by God before you ever did a single thing for anyone. That soul is the real you, and it is not diminished by 1 degree when the doing stops. You are not your job, your strength, your usefulness, or your role. You are a beloved child of God, and that identity cannot age, cannot weaken, cannot retire, and cannot be taken from you by any number of years. The second lie is that your best years are behind you. But for the one who belongs to God, the best is not behind, it is ahead. John's greatest work came in his exiled old age, not his vigorous youth. And the truest best of all, the glory, the resurrection, the face of God, is entirely ahead of you, drawing nearer with every passing day. Your best years are not the ones you are mourning. They are the ones still coming, in this life and beyond it. The road runs uphill, toward the light, not down into the dark. Consider how strange and wonderful this is. Every other story of decline runs the same way. A thing rises, peaks, and falls, and the falling is the end. But the story God writes for His children runs backwards to all of that. The body falls, yes, but the soul rises. The outer life dims, but the inner life brightens. And the very end, which the world dreads as the final defeat, is in fact the doorway into the only life that was ever fully real, where everything good that was ever lost is restored, and everything you loved that was taken is given back, and the aging and the weakness and the tears are gone forever. For the believer, the best is not a memory to mourn. It is a promise to wait for, and it grows nearer, not further, with every passing day. You are not walking away from your best years. You are walking toward them. The third lie is that you are just a burden now. But God Himself has promised to carry you in your old age, and He does not call it a burden. He calls it His joy. You are not a weight He is reluctantly bearing. You are a child He delights to carry. And among His people, being cared for is not shame. It is the very design of the body of Christ, where the strong bear the weak, and one day the weak are born in turn. You carried others in your strength. To be carried now is not your failure. It is simply your turn to be held. And there is a hidden gift in it, too, that the fear of being a burden cannot see. When you allow others to care for you, you are giving them the chance to love, to serve, to grow in tenderness and patience and sacrifice, the very things that make a soul more like Christ. The grown child who cares for an aging parent is not merely being burdened. They are being shaped, deepened, given the holy privilege of returning a lifetime of love. To receive their care with grace is not to take something from them. It is to give them something precious. So do not rob the people who love you of the gift of loving you. Let them carry you, as you once carried, and trust that in the economy of God's family, the carrying blesses the carrier as much as the carried. The fourth lie is that God is finished with you, that He has no more purpose for your remaining years. But as long as there is breath in you, God has purpose for you. The old still bear fruit. The old still show God's strength to the next generation. John on his island, Packer in his blindness, the praying saint in the quiet room, all of them were useful to God in their weakest years. You are not a finished thing set on a shelf. You are a field still bearing, a servant still sent, a child still held, and still here for a reason. And here is a simple proof of it. You are still alive. God has not yet taken you home, and God does not leave His children on the earth by accident or oversight. If you woke up this morning, if breath is still moving in and out of you, then God still has you here on purpose. And where there is purpose, there is meaning. And where there is meaning, there is no such thing as a wasted, pointless day. You may not be able to see what the purpose is. It may be hidden in a prayer you will pray, a word you will speak, a witness your patient endurance will be to someone watching, a love you will give or receive. But the purpose is there, as surely as your breath is there. The day God is finished with you is the day He takes you home. Until then, every single morning you are given is a morning with a reason in it. handed to you by a God who is not finished and does not deal in pointless days. And the fifth lie is that it is all just decline now, all downhill to the end. But in God's economy, the very opposite is true. The outward man perishes, yes, but the inward man is renewed day by day. What looks, from the outside, like a slow dying is, on the inside, a slow ripening, a drawing nearer to glory, a field coming gold toward its harvest. The end of a believer's life is not a fading out into nothing. It is a gathering in, a coming home, the long-awaited harvest of a life the Lord Himself has tended. The world sees an old person nearing the end and thinks only of subtraction, of a candle guttering out. But God sees a harvest coming ready, a child coming home, a long faithfulness about to receive its reward. These are opposite pictures of the very same gray head, the very same trembling hands. One is the careless eye of a world that knows nothing of eternity. The other is the loving gaze of the farmer who planted the field and has tended it all its days and knows exactly what the gold at its edges truly means. You get to choose which eye you will see your own life through, and I am pleading with you to choose the farmer's. And if the fear and the loneliness and the losses of growing old have grown so heavy that you have begun to feel you would be better gone, that the people you love would be relieved of a burden if you simply were not here, please, hear me, and do not carry that alone for one more night. That feeling is a lie that the darkness tells, and it is not the truth about you. Reach out as soon as you can to someone you trust, a loved one, a pastor, a doctor, a counselor. You are not a burden. You are carried. Your life still has worth and purpose and a place. And there are people who would be devastated, not relieved, to lose you. Tell someone how heavy it has become. You were never meant to bear this in silence. And let me say one thing more to that fear directly, because it lies so convincingly. The thought that the people you love would be relieved to be free of you is exactly backwards from the truth. Ask anyone who has lost an aging parent or grandparent or old friend whether they felt relief, and they will tell you they would give almost anything for one more ordinary afternoon, one more conversation, one more chance to simply sit in the same room. The people who love you do not experience you as a burden to be rid of. They experience you as a treasure they know they will not have forever, and whose every remaining day is precious to them in ways you may not fully see. Your absence would not lighten their lives. It would leave a hole in them that nothing could fill. You are not a weight they are waiting to set down. You are a gift they are holding for as long as they are allowed to keep you. So what do you actually do when you feel yourself growing old and useless? A few gentle things. Let yourself grieve the real losses honestly, before God. Do not pretend you are fine when you are not. Name before Him the strength that is leaving, the roles you have lost, the friends who are gone, the world that is vanishing. Lament is not faithlessness, it is honesty. And the God who is honest about aging in His own word will not flinch from your honest sorrow. He can hold the full, unedited weight of an aging heart's grief, and He draws near, not away, when you bring it. So bring Him the specific griefs, not just a general sadness. Tell Him about the hands that will not do what they once did. Tell Him about the friend whose funeral you went to last month, and how alone it left you. Tell Him about the role you lost, the respect you miss, the fear that wakes you in the night. He is not a God who can only be approached with tidy, grateful prayers. He is a Father who wants the real thing, the unedited truth of your aching heart. And He can hold all of it without being scandalized or wearied. There is a strange healing that comes simply from naming your losses honestly before the one who already sees them. The grief carried alone and unspoken grows heavy and bitter. The same grief, poured out before God, begins slowly to soften into something He can comfort. Do not protect God from your sorrow. Bring it to Him. That is what He is there for. Then refuse the lie that your worth is your usefulness. When the thought comes that you are worthless now because you can do less, answer it with the truth. I was precious to God before I could do anything, and I am precious to Him still. Rest your worth where it always belonged, not in what you produce, but in whose you are. Keep bearing fruit in whatever form is still open to you. You may not be able to do what you once did, but you can almost always do something. You can pray, and the prayers of an old saint move heaven. You can bless. You can encourage. You can tell the younger ones what God has done across your long life, showing His strength to the next generation, which is the very thing the aging psalmist asked God to let him live to do. Find the one thing you still can do, and do it as unto the Lord. It is real fruit, and do not despise that one thing for being small. You may look at what you can still offer: a prayer, a kind word, a listening ear, a story passed to a grandchild, and think it too little to matter against all you once could do. But God has never measured by size. He treasured a widow's 2 small coins above the large gifts of the rich, because she gave what she had. The question God asks is never, how much can you do compared to what you once did? The question is only this: will you give what you still have? The small, faithful offering of your weakened years, given with love, is precious to God beyond what you can imagine. Do not wait until you can do something big again, for that day may not come. Give the small thing today with all the love you have, and watch how God honors it. Receive care without shame. When you must lean on others, let yourself be carried the way you once carried others. It is not weakness, it is the turning of the seasons, and it is the design of God's family. Allowing others to love and serve you is itself a gift you give them. And if pride rises up and insists that you should be able to manage on your own, that needing help is somehow shameful, gently remind it that even the Lord Jesus, in His hours of deepest need, allowed others to serve Him. He let a friend's home shelter Him. He let women provide for His ministry. On the night of His agony, He asked His friends to stay near and watch with Him. The Son of God Himself did not insist on total self-sufficiency. He received the love and care of others with grace. If He could receive, so can you, without shame, without apology. There is a holy humility in letting yourself be cared for, a laying down of pride that is its own kind of spiritual growth. The years that teach you to receive may be teaching you something your strong years never could: how to be loved simply for who you are, and not for what you can do in return. And fix your eyes ahead, not behind. Stop measuring your life by the strength that is fading, and start measuring it by the glory that is coming. Run your last lap, as that old teacher said, flat out, with whatever you have left, because you are not running down toward a grave, you are running home, toward a God who is waiting to catch you at the finish. This single shift in where you fix your eyes can change everything about how your remaining years feel. As long as you are looking backward at the strength you have lost and the years that are gone, your life will feel like a story of subtraction, and every day will seem poorer than the last. But the moment you turn your eyes forward to the glory that is coming, to the God who waits, to the resurrection that draws nearer with every sunrise, your life becomes a story of approach, of drawing closer, of almost there. The same set of days, the very same aging body, feels entirely different depending on which direction you are facing. So turn around. Stop staring at the receding shore of your youth and start watching the approaching shore of your home. You are not drifting away from everything good. You are sailing toward it, and the harbor lights are growing brighter, not dimmer, with every passing day. Let me leave you with this, and then I will let you go gently. Picture a field in the autumn of the year. All through the spring it was green and tender, and all through the summer it grew, lush and busy and full of effort. But now the season has turned. The green is going out of it. The leaves at the edges are browning and curling. The bright vigor of summer has faded, and to a careless passing eye, the field looks as though it is dying, worn out, finished, with its best days plainly behind it. But the farmer who planted that field, who walked its rows and tended it through every season, sees something altogether different when he looks across it now. He does not see a field that is dying. He sees a field that is ripe. He sees that all those green and growing months were never the point. They were only the working toward this. He sees the grain standing heavy and golden, the fruit hanging full and ready. And he knows that now, at last, comes the season the whole year was for. Now comes the harvest, and the richest. Most valuable thing that field will ever yield comes not in the green of its youth, but in the gold of its age. When it is gathered in, think of it. No farmer ever stood at the edge of his ripe field in the golden light of autumn and mourned that it was no longer the tender green of spring. He does not want it green. Green is not what he planted for. He planted for this, for the heavy heads of grain, for the gathering in that makes all the long labor of the year worthwhile. The green was only ever the promise. The harvest is the fulfillment. And to grieve the passing of your green years as though they were the best of you is to mistake the promise for the fulfillment, the planting for the harvest. Your strong young years, lovely as they were the green. They were the field growing toward something. And the something they were growing toward is not behind you in the days of your strength. It is here, now, in the gold of your age, in the ripening of a soul that has known God long and learned to trust Him deep. The old scripture says it plainly, "Thou shalt come to thy grave in a full age, like as a shock of corn cometh in his season." Not cut down green and wasted, gathered ripe and full in its proper season by the one who planted it. So it is with a life that belongs to God. What looks from the outside like fading and decline, the strength going, the green leaving, is, in the farmer's eyes, a field at last coming ripe, a harvest drawing near, the truest fruit of a long life finally ready to be gathered home. So if you feel yourself going gold at the edges, dear heart, the green of your strength quietly leaving you, do not believe the careless eye that calls it only dying. The farmer is not standing at the edge of his field grieving over a ruin. He is looking out over a ripening harvest with gladness in his eyes. Your strong green years were never your best. They were the growing toward your best. And the gathering in, when it comes in its season, will not be the waste of your life. It will be its fulfillment. The long-awaited harvest of a field the Lord Himself has tended with His own hands all the way home. So lift your gray head, dear heart. It is not a mark of shame, it is a crown. And the one who set it there is not finished with you yet. He has tended you this far. He will tend you the rest of the way, faithfully, to the very end. Rest in that tonight, dear heart. You are precious to Him, now and always, and nothing about growing old will ever change it.